So here we have the first question regarding graphing a linear relation from a table of values. So here's our table of values, and we're going to actually graph it now. So in my graph that I have, it's the axes are unlabeled, and so I have to label them. So my x values only go from 1 to 5, so I can label every line 1 if I wanted to, but I have to be careful because my y values go from 350 to 1750. So that means I want to label from about 1 to at least 18. So that's why I started labeling every line 2 instead of 1, because I wouldn't have fit on here if I didn't. So then there I have to 18. You can't label your axes with these numbers here. You have to label your axes just with the numbers 2, 4, 6, 8, or 1, 2, 3, 4. You can't use these numbers. So we're going to go ahead and plot. So our first ordered pair or coordinate pair that we're going to plot is 1 and 350. And then the number that's listed first is always your x. So we're going to go 1 and 350, and it's about right there. And then 2 and 7. And then 3 and 1050. And again, as close as you can get it. 4 and 14. That one's an easy one to do. And 5 and 1750 was about there. All right, so we've graphed the data. So we've done this first point here, graph the data. Then it says, does it make sense to join the points on the graph? Explain. Well, we have to look at what our data is actually telling us. Our data is actually saying that we have, this is the number of DVD rentals, right? And our y-axis is the cost in dollars. And when you're asked questions like this, and it says, does it make sense to join the points? You have to think, can I have a half of something? Like, so if I were to graph something right here, so say if I were to put a point here, I'm going to use a different color. So say if I were to put a point right here, does that make sense? And so we look, well, then our point would be 2.5 and about, it looks about around 9. Okay, and remember, 2.5 stands for the number of DVD rentals. Does it make sense to have 2.5 DVD rentals? So you really have to look at what your data is telling you. So in this case, when we're answering question A, no, it doesn't make sense to join the points, because joining the points means that all the points in the line make sense. But we can't, because actually the only points that make sense are the dots themselves. When you draw a line, you're implying that every single point in between your dots that you've plotted makes sense. So no, it doesn't make sense to join. And it says explain. So then I say, because you can't have a fraction, like a half, right? A fraction is like a half or a third, a fraction of a DVD rental. Even though, yes, you can have a fraction of $1, you can't have a fraction of a DVD rental. Okay, so B. The next question is about, is this relation linear? Justify your answer. And so you need to know here what linear means. Well, linear means line. So is this relation linear? Well, yes, it is linear because the points lie in a straight line. Even though we're not going to join them, we can still clearly see that they form a straight line. So therefore they're linear. And the last question, it says, use the table to describe the pattern in the rental costs. How is this pattern shown on the graph? And so this is where you have to use your words a little bit and say, well, how can I describe this pattern? So how you always do is you say, as one goes up, this is what happens to the other. So we're going to say, as the number of DVDs rented increase by 1. So we say as one increases or decreases by this amount, the other one does this. And so we have to look at, well, what happens to the cost? So as the number of DVDs rented increased by 1, the rental cost increases by, well, how much is it going up by every time? From $10.50 to $14. So I'm looking at here and to here. I can clearly see, just do some simple math and go $17.50 minus $14, and I'll see that every single time it changes by $3.50. So the rental cost increases by $3.50. So that's using the table to describe the pattern in the rental costs. And how is this pattern shown in the graph? So we still haven't answered that part. So on the graph it says, so how you want to describe it in the graph is each point on the graph is 1 unit right and 3.5 units up from the previous unit. So what that means is if I start from this point right here, the next point is 1 over and 3.5 units up. And every single point is 1 unit over and 3.5 units up. 1 over and 3.5 units up. So that's the pattern that we see in our graph all the way through.